Happy New Year again, and welcome to the first review for the year 2020. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wasn't the Star Wars Rise of Skywalker technically the first review you did in the year 2020? Well, yes, technically. And if you want to get even more technical about it, yeah, this movie was actually released in limited release in 2019. But it wasn't in wide release until this past Friday. So therefore, I still count it as the first review for 2020. Don't like it? Do your own review show and change it. Okay, so, can't drive with these. This film has been getting a lot of praise fairly early on. Like I say, part of the reason it was put into limited release in 2019 was so that it could qualify for award season, which apparently it's already doing fairly well, and it's getting all this praise and whatnot. So, odds are you know the story, that it's about two soldiers in World War II who are given the task of running basically this marathon across, various battlefields to deliver a message, to call off an attack, because the attack is basically going to result in everybody getting killed. So yeah, pretty basic, almost Saving Private Ryan-esque story. What made this one unique, and I didn't realize this until someone told me it today, like literally right before I went and saw the film, is that the gimmick here is that the entire film is one long tracking shot, which means no visible cuts. It's all done in one take, which I can't think of a movie that's attempted that since Rope. I'm sure there have been, but I'm having a hard time coming up with one. So that's an interesting thing to try to take on. And I got to admit to being a bit in awe of exactly everything they did and the way they did it in this film. So that's the main gimmick. It's your basic war film, but with the thing of they basically want the audience to feel like they are going along for the ride. You're not a passive observer. You're almost, it feels like a modern war video game, honestly, like a third-person shooter where you're a silent protagonist following this story. So the long tracking shot motif is an interesting one, but it's kind of responsible for the 50-50 point of view I have on this film. So let's get into it. So positive side. So first of all, the director in me, my inner director, which is my primary mode, is just in awe of how good this movie is. Like the level of planning, the composition of shots, the placement of actors, the planning of the camera movements. My God, if I was wearing a hat, I would take it off to the director of this film. Matter of fact, I'm going to put this hat on just so I can take it off to that director. Damn, this film, it's amazing. I'm hard pressed to think of a film that visually was this fucking magnificent and artistic. Maybe I'm throwing a little too much praise at it here, but I kind of have to go back to Citizen Kane to think of a movie that had, like I say, this level of planning for every single bloody moment. The opening scene, which opens on this beautiful field, and then it pans back and you see our two main characters, and they get up and they're walking, and the camera keeps panning back, and you start to see little dots of other soldiers around them, and then they go down into the trench, and then it just keeps going, and you see more and more soldiers, and the world gets increasingly bigger and more detailed. And yeah, that's the other thing, production wise. Again, I'm going to put the hat on. All right, so the hat is on just so I can take it off to every element of the production. Like this, the planning of this film, the meticulous attention to detail in the sets, in the costume, in the props. I don't know. I know there are a few points in here where they must have used CGI backdrops, or they did use some CGI. Some of the CGI, like when they were animating some of the people, was very obvious. I'm going to say that. But the rest of it, just in terms of the exteriors and everything, my God, it was gorgeous and flawless. I don't know how much of it was CGI, but it looked like you were there. It really looked it. And I think this film succeeds well. It succeeds past what it must have believed it could have in getting across its central conceit. You know, I believe, obviously, the central conceit, of course, war is hell. I mean, everybody, that's why you make a war movie, essentially. Bravery comes from the littlest person, so on and so forth. What I like about this movie, and it would only work in a film like this that's shot this way, where you the audience are an active participant. You're down in the trenches with them. You're feeling the wet, the mud, the muck. You know, by the time you get done with this film, you feel like you've run the marathon with them. And moments in this movie that would otherwise, you think of any other war movie, would otherwise be huge moments. A character gets killed. When the task is completed, spoiler alert, you know, these are moments that in other movies would get a big music swell, really dramatic camera angles, big close-ups, you know, and stuff like that. This movie, it's kind of like, and that happened. And then you go on. Because, at least as far as I understand the interpretation of the film, in real life, that's what it is. There is, you know, someone gets killed in battle. It's not a big dramatic thing. It's down, it's dirty, it's ugly, and sometimes it's over before you can really register what happened. And this movie really sells that. It sells what it's like to be there. Like I say, you feel like you've gone on the trek with them. So, a lot of praise, nothing but respect for all of it. But I can't say the film is perfect. And its major flaw is also a result of its, you know, central core mechanic, that long tracking shot. Because you're going along with them and it's happening in, you know, quote unquote real time. Obviously there are cuts, and sometimes it's easy to spot them. You know, anytime the screen goes completely black or they pass in behind something, obviously it's used as a marker to kind of cut the scene. But anyway, because, you know, there are no cuts, quote unquote, it means that the filler bits that in other movies you'd kind of skip over or do in montage to kind of get you to the next plot point or the next interesting bit, you got to sit through it. You got to sit through the entire trek. I swear to God, there was less walking in the Lord of the Rings movies. And I thought those movies topped the, and they walked. And they walked. And they walked. I swear, I feel like I got all my steps in watching this film. And again, it's there for a purpose. But again, the problem is long stretches where they're just meandering through you can only look at the detail of the scenery, the skill of the directing and whatnot for so long before you start going, okay, is something gonna happen? And again, that's when something does happen, when something suspenseful does, finally kind of jump out at you as it would in real life. It is kind of a kind of moment. But for every one of those, there's just as many. Okay, we're still walking here. All right, we're still going along. We can we get, I found, and it could be just I've had a very long day, so it could be just the fact that I've had that long day, so I'm very tired as I'm recording this. That there were times in the movie I was fading out. And I don't do that very often. I work all day Fridays and then usually go to the movies at night and review while I'm driving home. And I very rarely start to fade out. But this time I was just like, And unfortunately, I don't know how I would correct that. I always hate bringing up a problem if I don't know how to correct it. I think the best solution I could come up with is you want to use that long tracking shot. You want the audience to feel we're in it with them. That's great. But I think for an entire movie like this, I think it's too much. I think they could have cut it back and used it for big, important moments and let some of the other stuff, some of the, like I say, the more mundane things, those could just kind of pass into, montage or cut or something. The other problem with it, with the long tracking shot, is that there is rarely a time the camera is not in motion. It is always moving. And I'm not going to go out all the way and say it made me motion sick, but it was making me a little dizzy because your fixed points keep moving, and the camera keeps moving. I don't know if anybody else has ever seen these. Back in Alaska, we've got this tourist trap, and it's one of these little theaters where they show you a movie showing the scenery and everything, and it's swooping over and it's going down and it's coming up, and the goal is supposed to make you feel like you're in the helicopter or you're the bird flying or whatever. And it reminded me of that. And the problem with now that movie, the one back in Alaska, is only maybe 15, 20 minutes long. And even then, you leave it kind of going, okay? I mean, this is like 2 hours of this. So it became very hard sometimes to focus on what was going on because you're too busy blinking going, okay, stop moving. Like you were so happy when they stopped walking and sat down for a minute so that you could just focus your eyes again and focus on a fixed point. So that was an issue. Not much in the way of character or character development in this, and I don't mind that in this instance. Normally that's a big thing for me. There's no characters. In this story, the journey is the story, not so much who we're on the journey with. It's kind of almost a 12 Angry Men, 12 Angry Jurors kind of situation where they're meant to be kind of vessels. You, the audience, are moving through. They have enough character, enough personality that you know that they are actual people, but so yeah, I don't know quite what else to say about this one. Again, very middle of the road with it for me, because I think, again, the director in me is in awe of it, is in awe of the artistry and the mastery of skill. That you got to be a master of your art form to pull something like this off, and they do very well. The audience member in me is a little bit dizzy and was a little bit bored. So I don't know where where to cut the cord, where to make the divide, But I definitely think it is, I don't know if I'd say it's a masterpiece. I think it's this director's masterpiece. A total film masterpiece? I don't know. I don't know about that. But in all, good experience. And again, if you're interested in film or directing in any way, this is a movie to watch. It's a masterclass. So, final grade for 1917. I'm going a B- on this one. I think there's a lot of good going on here. But I think they could have sacrificed concept in favor of flow a little bit more. And I don't think you would have lost that much. My opinion, but hey, it's my review. All right, so that is our first review for 2020. So the year is off to a decent start. So it's always fun this time of year when the first movies are coming out, and you're just kind of gearing up, going, "Gee, I wonder what this year is going to bring us." So I don't know, but it's going to be a fun time finding out. I hope you will join me for the drive home and for the year to come, and let's have some fun watching movies together. So until next time, as always, drive safe, and I'll see you at the movies.